Hello, everybody. My name is Josh Nicholas with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Like mentioned earlier, I've been managing cooperative projects for the agency since 2006, including the ALEA grant program, which I am here to talk to you about today. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video there. So the program goal is to support organizations and individuals that utilize volunteers to implement projects throughout the state that protect and enhance fish, wildlife, and their habitats, create, maintain, and enhance recreational opportunities, educate the public about fish and wildlife resources, and conduct fish and wildlife science. And before I move on, I need to mention that this ALEA grant program is completely different from the RCO ALEA grant program that you heard about just a minute ago from Kim. So I just wanted to throw that out there so there's no confusion. So if you could go on to the next slide. So as mentioned, the program source of funds is the Aquatic Lands Enhancement account. Our current funding level is approximately $867,000 per biennium. We do want to spread this funding around as much as possible among project types around the state. So we limit individual project requests to 5% of available funds, which works out to about $43,000 max per project. I'll also mention that our average grant award is historically around $18,000. Next slide. Okay, so let's talk about some basic eligibility requirements. First of all, applicants can be nonprofits, conservation districts, schools, tribes, and even individual citizens. State and federal agencies are not eligible. Volunteers, exclamation points. Volunteerism is a cornerstone of this program, so all projects must utilize some level of volunteer effort, the more the better, to complete the project's objectives. ALEA grants only support project activity that occurs in Washington State. And as to types of eligible projects, there are several categories. We have our education and outreach, research and citizen science. Go ahead and next slide. Of course, habitat projects and typical activities for those would include installing native plants, removing invasive species, maybe installing large woody debris and boulders in stream, or even doing nutrient enhancement. We also fund facility development projects, artificial fish production projects, and finally, we can consider other projects that might not fit neatly into the above categories. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the upcoming grant timeline. Some of you out there decide that you might want to apply for a grant. You want to know that the application period will next be open December 1st through February 20th, 2023. During that time period, you would go to our website to download, complete, and submit a form that has some basic eligibility questions. I review the form, and if all looks good, I'll provide you the grant application along with our grant application guide. Once an application is submitted, and if you request it of me, I will review it to identify areas where I think modifications can be made to make it more competitive. This service I can provide up until the last 2 weeks of the application period, because it just gets too hectic at that point. So I encourage early submittal, and earlier the better. Now, starting March 1st through mid-May, our 13-member committee will review and score the applications according to criteria that I'll discuss in the next slide. June 1, decisions are announced, and July 1, the grant period officially begins. And June 30, 2025, the grant period would end. So you would have 2 years to complete your projects. Go ahead and hit the next slide, please. So these are the 7 criteria that our review committee is going to use to evaluate and score your project. We're looking at consistency with WDFW goals and objectives, public benefit, volunteer effort, cost of benefits, qualifications and experience, performance measures, and focus on priority habitats and species. And there is also a 2-point bonus category that you might be eligible for. If you've never applied for an ALEA grant, you automatically get 2 points. Maybe you applied for a project the previous year, you didn't get it. but you're trying again, you can get 1 point. Or if you applied for a different project and were successful and are applying for a new project, you can get 1 point. So, and those few points actually can be significant. So next slide. So what will be happening during the grant period? Obviously, this is when you're going to be conducting your project. You're also going to be submitting your reimbursement requests. So we provide funds on a cost reimbursement basis. So you'll be making your purchases, then submitting an invoice voucher along with backup documentation that supports the charges. Eligible costs include those goods and services and even volunteer mileage that are identified in your project budget. Salaries and benefits are not eligible costs. And for more specifics on what can and cannot be reimbursed, I encourage you to review our policies and procedures manual that's available on our webpage. Also, each project will be assigned a WDFW field contact. And this person's duties are to provide you technical assistance if it's needed. And they'll also do a project site visit and complete a field contact report each year of the grant period. Grantees are also required to submit quarterly progress reports as well as a comprehensive final report. So next slide. I just wanted to highlight one of our habitat restoration projects from last biennium. This was sponsored by one of our regional fisheries enhancement groups, the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association, called the Community Salmon Habitat Restoration Project. And they engaged a lot of volunteers and landowners in completing habitat restoration activities at 6 project sites. They removed over 2 acres of Himalayan blackberry, installed over 5,000 native plants, engaged 6 landowners, utilized over 500 community volunteers, and logging over an impressive 1,700 volunteer hours. And this is an example of a typical project that ALEA grants would fund. So that's it for my presentation. If you have questions after today, you can reach me at the email address and phone number shown there. And I thank you much for your time.